Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at yet another of these 2021 Schleich releases. This time, however, we are going to check out their Mosasaurus, and this is a figure that I think many people were kind of dreading. However, I must say, in person, it's actually a lot nicer than the promotional images had initially led me to believe. I'm not saying that the figure is amazing, because it's certainly not that. It's still quite awkward looking in most ways. It's got like a very strange, large kind of a chest region here, and just somewhat of an awkward shape in general to the figure. But that being said, I still think it looks nicer than the initial images had led me to believe. Not a huge fan of this weird striping on the face, though. But regardless, again, it's not as horrible as it's not as horrible as I had initially believed it would be, but I'm really excited to show it to you guys and see what your guys' thoughts are on this figure. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. Looking up here at the head sculpt of the Mosasaurus, you can see that there is some decent texturing to the face. It's nothing amazing or anything like that, but it does look pretty decent, I think. Again, definitely better than I was initially led to believe with the promotional images, which is something that's quite common, it seems, with the 2021 figures from Schleich. You can see that there are super awkward-looking kind of stripes, though, that run up from the bottom of the upper jaw. They kind of just look like random triangles here on the face. They do look better, I feel, over here. They definitely look a lot more appealing because they actually touch the bottom of the upper jaw, so it definitely looks more appealing over here than over here because the stripes kind of start up above the area where the upper jaw kind of begins, so it just doesn't look as good on this side. The inside of the mouth also sports some pretty nice detailing. You can see the teeth are kind of, again, those trademark bulky teeth from Schleich. They're painted pretty nicely, though. You can also see that the extra row of teeth is included inside the mouth right there. They're also painted. The tongue as well sports some interesting detailing, fairly realistic looking coloration in there as well. You can see that the actual paint here on the kind of skin flap here on the side of the mouth isn't all that well applied. It kind of cuts off early before it actually runs the course of the entire side. Over here, it definitely looks better, I think, as far as that coloration goes. So just generally, this side of the face, I think, looks a lot more appealing than what we see on the opposing side. Moving back here into the neck, you can see some extraordinarily nice-looking scaling to the figure. I think the actual texture stamp they used, as far as the scale detail goes, looks really, really cool. Definitely a very unique and different look for a Mosasaurus, and you can see that the neck gets kind of chunky here, with a lot of random skin wrinkles and everything going on down here on the underside. The texturing here on the underside also looks okay. It's been given a nice dark wash so that that detail pops pretty nicely. It has a nice white coloration on the underside, which is a pretty realistic tone of color, and then a darker coloration here for the top, which also I feel like is quite realistic. Maybe not the actual tone. The tone of color is interesting. It's a very interesting choice of like a greenish coloration. Again, not really my first choice, but at least they're kind of thinking outside the box as far as the coloration goes, and it has some pretty appealing looking like white stripes that run down here throughout the sides of the body and everything. You can again see the very cool scale detail here of the figure, and if I can get my camera to focus, there you go. You can see like really little detail within each one of the scales, so it looks very interesting the way they've sculpted that out. And you can also see some ridges up here on the back of the Mosasaurus. The white stripes look pretty realistic as far as the actual application of the paint. It looks like body color, not kind of paint on a figure. And then running out here onto the flipper, you can see that they've kind of dry brushed some white over top, but you can also get a good sense of the scale detail in that area due to that dry brushing. Again, leading down here into the lower part of the body, you see lots of random skin wrinkles and everything going on. And this is the area where it's just like super fat and super weird looking in the kind of chest region of the Mosasaurus. It's just very strange the way they've sculpted it. And it's just like the lower part right here, almost like it has a pot belly, but the belly is down here, so it's like a pot chest. I don't know, it's weird. But then it thins right after, like it really sucks in right here and then has a thin appearance up here. So very weird the way that they've sculpted this out. But continuing to move back throughout the body, again, you can see that very nice scale detail. I like how it starts with a larger scaling and then transitions to a nice small scaling the lower into the body you get, and then the scales pretty much completely disappear, and it's more of just like a really weird skin texture look here for the underside with lots of creasing and everything going on. You can see the undersides of the flippers as well are actually quite nicely detailed and really bringing that detail out with a nice dark wash. The rear flipper as well sports that kind of dry brushing over top, again just like we had seen on the flipper in the front. And then we continue to move along the body. You continue to see the ridges that run along the back of the Mosasaurus, some more of those kind of skin wrinkles and everything down here as we lead out into the tail, and the tail again sports that kind of like a dry brushing look with that white coloration. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I mean, it is what it is. It's just the way it goes, I guess, with Schleich in this particular figure. They just decided to kind of sloppily dry brush some paint over top, but other than that, I think the tail looks decent. And then looking at the opposing side, there's probably not going to be too much difference on this side in comparison to what we had seen on the previous side. You can see that there's kind of like a larger scaling here on the back of the head that sticks up off of the body as it leads into the neck area of the Mosasaurus. And again, the detail on this side looks pretty much the same as what we had seen on the previous side. It's just kind of swimming along. It doesn't look like it has any kind of dramatic pose to it. So there's not really much movement being shown on this side that we didn't already see on the previous side. Again, you can see though that the dark wash really brings all the detail out quite nicely, makes all the detail pop overall on the Mosasaurus, and just generally makes the paint job look a little more lifelike. And again, the sculpt pretty much the same on this side as what we had seen on the previous side. Detail-wise, sculpt-wise, paint-wise, everything looks pretty much the same. We have the, again, dry brushing here on both the tail fin and then the flippers as well. But honestly, even with the somewhat awkward appearance, I feel like the figure is still kind of appealing. It's actually nicer than I expected it to be, but that's not saying that by any means it's a good Mosasaurus, because there are definitely a lot better choices out there, especially with the somewhat awkward look in this weird area I just don't understand. But aside from that, again, it's not the worst Mosasaurus for sure, and much nicer than I expected it to be. So as far as a size goes on the Mosasaurus, this is definitely the largest 2021 Schleich figure that we have. So for a length, for the snout to the tail, you are looking at about 12 3/4 inches actually, or about 32.5, just a hair under 32.5 centimeters in length. So it's definitely pretty long as far as that goes. And then for a height, I would say maybe the back's probably the tallest spot, about 2.5 inches or about 6.5 centimeters for a size comparison. There is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Schleich Mosasaurus, and the Colovosaurus is ignorantly just blocking the face of the Mosasaurus. But you can definitely see next to these figures again that this Mosasaurus sports a pretty big size overall. Of course, it's a pretty large species of marine reptile, so it is good to see Schleich making it a little larger, but regardless, Schleich tends to do a lot of things we don't understand, so it is nice to see that they did in fact give the Mosasaurus a pretty good size overall. So this 2021 Schleich Mosasaurus, definitely not as terrible as I expected it to be, but again, not that great either. The sculpt definitely sports a really interesting look, some pretty nice detail included within, and I am quite a fan of the kind of scaly appearance that they've given it and the very fine detail that they've included within the scales of the Mosasaurus. It's a very interesting and different look for Mosasaurus compared to what I most often see when it comes to companies producing a Mosasaurus figure. And again, Schleich did a great job of continuing to include a lot of really nice fine detail, a lot of very interesting skin folds and stuff on this one, which I'm not entirely sure how good that looks, but at least they did try as far as really including a lot of detail, a lot better on this than they did with their Plesiosaurus, which I normally pick up almost every release from every one of these kind of more mainstream companies, but I actually skipped the Plesiosaurus because it was so bad. But this one here, again, I think it looks pretty darn nice overall as far as the fine detailing goes, especially in comparison to the Plesiosaurus. But that said, the overall appearance of the Mosasaurus, even though the head sculpt I think looks better here than I initially thought it did in the prototype images, the overall appearance to the Mosasaurus is still quite awkward looking, very strange looking as far as the overall shape of the body, and almost more like a sea monster type look rather than a Mosasaurus, like an accurate Mosasaurus. Accuracy can be pretty much thrown out the window as far as the appearance of this Mosasaurus goes. It just generally looks very strange to me, and I'm not entirely sure what was going through Schleich's mind when they initially came up with the overall appearance for this Mosasaurus, because, I mean, I guess kudos for kind of thinking outside the box and trying to make it look a little bit different, but at the same time, not so many kudos, because ended up making it look quite strange. The paint job as well, I think looks pretty cool. I mean, it's nothing amazing, probably wouldn't have been my first choice for a Mosasaurus, but if you actually look at it, I think it looks pretty good overall. Nice tones of color, realistically painted. The only areas I'm not a huge fan of are the weird dry brushing areas of the white over top of the flippers and the tail fin and everything. Not a huge fan of those areas of the Mosasaurus, but other than that, again, it's interesting. I'll give it that. I'll say it's a very interesting looking figure overall, and at least it's not as bad as I initially had thought it was. Pretty cool, I guess, in a way, for something that's a little different than your normal Mosasaurus. So if you would like to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to everythingdinosaur.com where I purchased mine. So make sure you head on over there, check out Everything Dinosaur, of course, and pick yourself up this very interesting Schleich Mosasaurus if you are, in fact, intending on getting a hold of it. And make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.